This show contains general information about legal matters. This information is not advice and should not be treated as such. If you have any specific questions about any legal matter, you should consult your attorney or other professional legal services provider. Be advised that while Cheapskate is a lawyer, he is not your lawyer. Also, Jimmy Franks is an idiot, and you should never take his advice.
You're listening to Song Crimes. I'm professional idiot Jimmy Franks, and along with real-life attorney Cheapskate. Hello, Cheapskate.
Hello.
We explore the statements and confessions made by songwriters in popular music and pass judgment on those who choose to operate outside the law. Court is now in session, and it is that special time of year. You can smell the eggnog and taste the mistletoe. It's Christmas, and you can't avoid the music. It's everywhere. It's in every store. It's on every radio station, and you know what? Frankly, I'm sick of it. So let's take some of these jerks to task for maybe some of the un-Christmassy things that they've been doing. Cheapskate, you spent some time looking over some of these. It's astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah, I note that we are straying far away from the religious carols here, because it's not for us to be judging the Son of Man. But as we get into the more secular carols, there are a lot of materials here that are cause for concern.
Our first case is that of the 12 Days of Christmas.
On the 6th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 6 geese a-laying, 5 golden rings.
Everybody knows this one. I probably didn't need to include a clip of this song, but well, where do we start? We've got 12 days, and on several of these days, some offense it seems to be taking place. Starting with the first day of Christmas, my true love sent to me a partridge in a pear tree, and then the next day, my true love sent to me 2 turtle doves and a partridge in a pear tree. Assuming that these aren't stacking, so by the end of the thing you have 12 partridges and 12 pear trees, and I guess that would be 22 turtle doves, etc., etc. We're just going to assume that one day, one gift, right?
Right.
Okay. What about transporting livestock through the mail? Because this person is sending all kinds of manner of beast through the mail. Let's start with the animals. Let's start with the birds. And also, I guess we could talk about the pear tree, if there's any quarantines in effect on transporting fruit across state lines.
Well, if they are coming in from outside the United States, if they're coming in from outside the customs territory of the United States, there would be concern about sending in the pear tree. But guess what? You can totally send birds through the mail.
You can.
You can. Any non-endangered adult bird can be mailed as long as you include enough food for them to survive the trip.
Okay.
You can also send certain kinds of live day-old poultry that the partridge and the French hen would fall into. The other animals you can send through the mail are bees, scorpions, frogs, and non-poisonous insects.
Okay. Sadly, none of which are mentioned into this song. Otherwise, it would be a lot more exciting.
Yeah. On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a plague of frogs.
I like the idea of scorpions. That sounds fun. That's like a high desert Christmas.
Yeah.
We've got, okay, so we're covered on the partridge, the turtle doves, the French hens, the calling birds, the geese a-laying. Now, okay, you said adult birds. So if these geese are laying eggs, is that going to be an issue?
The eggs might be an issue. And of course, they could be an endangered kind of geese, in which case they can't be mailed.
But we'll just assume that the geese are cool. Swans a swimming are all right.
Swans are fun, yeah.
Now things get a little bit dicey, because now we're talking about transporting humans. We've moved directly from mailing livestock to human trafficking with the maids a milking on the 8th day. And then that follows with ladies dancing, lords a leaping, pipers piping, and drummers drumming. That's a lot of people to be sending through the mail, or maybe on the back of a panel van under the darkness of night. We don't know the circumstances, how these people are being transported. Let's just cut to the chase. Let's talk about slavery. You can't give someone a person.
You cannot, in fact, give someone a person unless they are a prisoner and they're in custody and you're transporting them. So if we want to assume that everything here is being done above the table, then all these maids milking and ladies dancing, etc., etc., are in the custody of the state, and they're simply being transported to their next location of custody.
Okay. So they're probably not prisoners. Maybe they're work for hire. It's not indentured servitude. This is a gig for them, right? And it looks like there's a lot of musicians here. That would make sense. You've got and performers, the ladies dancing, the lords a leaping, and the pipers piping, the drummers drumming. Sounds like a party. That's cool. We're probably gonna run into some noise complaints when you've got that many people hanging out in one spot.
Yeah, absolutely, especially if those pipes are bagpipes, because bagpipes can hit like jet engine levels, and there are a lot of cities that have flat-out bans on bagpipes. So we don't know what city this is set in, because we don't know what city Traditional lives in.
Right.
Some cities have decibel caps, like the one that Autograph ran into in Pasadena, in which case the bagpipes are definitely out, or they just say, look, if it's loud enough that people are getting irritated by it, you can get written up.
So knock it off. We kind of jumped over this one. The maids of milking, that implies that they are actively milking at the time of this report, and assuming that they're milking cows, or maybe they're not. I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are two options here. One option is they could be pumping breast milk, in which case, if I did my math right, there were exactly 50 people mentioned in this song. And if they are employees, then that means the gift recipient is their employer, and because there are 50 of them, they're covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. And that means...
they get insurance, right?
Yeah, and that means they are required by Department of Labor regulations to give the maids break time to pump and give them a private space to do it that is not the bathroom.
Okay. We didn't talk about this. I know that we don't have a nailed down jurisdiction, but generally there's going to be an issue if the recipient of all these gifts lives in the city limits. With all the certainly with the livestock, maybe with having 50 people living under the same roof. But let's talk about what laws might be broken by keeping animal gifts in a house or in your backyard if you just live in a suburb.
Yeah. Most cities have ordinances that restrict pet animals other than common household pets to certain zones. If they are in an agricultural zone, then they're fine. If they are not, then there might be restrictions on what kind of animals they can have. But if the person sending all these animals is a doctor, and the doctor says, yes, my recipient needs to have these animals in order to overcome one of their disabilities, which is possible.
My support geese.
Yeah, that has happened. I have read news stories about support geese, and frankly, if as weird as it sounds, if a doctor says they need it, who am I to question the doctor? So, so they would be support animals and not service animals. The difference is that a support animal, you have to be allowed to keep in your home, but you don't have to be allowed to take it out in public. A service animal is one that you would have to be allowed to take out in public. Service animals can only be dogs or miniature horses.
Okay. Yeah, and unless they're milking horses, I don't think we can get away with that one. Oh, and one more thing, we noticed that on the 10th day that the Lords a Leaping is the gift. Now, last time I checked, we don't have noblemen in the U.S.
That's That's Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution says the federal government can't grant you a title of nobility. Article 1, Section 10 says the states can't do it either. Now, when I was working out in the territories, we had a argument over whether or not that clause applied to the territories. And we've never tested that. So theoretically, you could be like the Prince of Puerto Rico, but nobody's tried.
Okay.
Now,
at best, it's an honorary title.
Yeah. The closest we have would be like chiefs in certain tribes or in American Samoa. The other option is the student athletes at Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio, are called the Lords. So it's possible that they have received the Gambier College, the Kenyon College track team.
Oh, it could be the track team, or maybe it's just a bunch of cheerleaders.
That's possible. That explains why they're leaping, yes.
Yeah, so let's just review the charges real quick. We've got transporting livestock through the mail.
Probably fine in this case.
in this case. Transporting humans.
Not fine.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna intuit that these people aren't performing under duress. We haven't trafficked like a full-on vaudeville variety show to this house.
No, but I think the trafficked vaudeville variety show is probably the next prestige drama on Showtime.
So the people are probably there willingly.
Yeah.
Now we might on the keeping of livestock or animals in city limits.
Yeah, it's probably a citation. Yeah.
And noise ordinances only if they have bagpipes. We should look at employment law a little bit more seriously because this is a huge operation.
Yeah.
This is no longer a small business.
Yeah, and then there's not a criminal offense for being a nobleman. We just have to not bow to them.
Yeah, maybe there's a bunch of Kentucky colonels.
Yeah, again, but not a title of nobility though, because it doesn't get inherited.
Gotcha. Okay, so then I sentence whoever wrote this. Maybe check in with the person that you're getting a gift for, and maybe get them something that they can use, and don't overdo it. You're showing off. Get them a gift certificate so that maybe they can get the people or the animals that they want.
Yeah, and I'm going to sentence the gift giver here to read that book about the different love languages and learn other ways to express your appreciation for a person other than just buying them things.
Our next song, Baby Needs a New Pair of Shoes. Literally, this is from a band called NewSong, and the song from NewSong is The Christmas Shoes.
Sir, I want to buy these shoes for my mama, please. It's Christmas Eve.
And this one had gotten some popularity. I mean, you might have heard it here and there, but got really popular when Patton Oswalt did a stand-up routine on it. It's an emotionally manipulative tune.
Yes,
and sure to maybe I don't know who this song is for. Maybe grandmas. I don't know who would like this song, but it was popular enough that we're talking about it today. So. It's one of those story songs where there is a fella in line at a store purchasing some things, engaging in conspicuous consumption for the holidays.
And then a Hallmark movie breaks out.
Right, a Hallmark movie breaks out. A little kid shows up with a pair of shoes from the store. The kid looks like your standard ragamuffin or street urchin from a Dickens play. And says, "Hey, mister, can you help me buy these shoes for my mother? She's on death's door. She's on her deathbed. I'm buying her shoes because she's about to die, and I want her to look nice when she meets Jesus." Awesome. That's just what I want to hear around the holidays.
Yeah.
It's just a good death song.
Yeah,
this is the intersection of death songs and Christmas music.
Yeah, and really flawed theology there from the kid.
How do you mean?
I seem to remember Jesus not much caring what kind of shoes people wore when they met him, and this bit about washing people's feet. But I can't expect a child to pay much attention to that. But NewSong ought to know better.
I forgot he tries to cut in line in front of the narrator because his mom is so close to dying that he needs to buy these shoes like immediately. He doesn't have the cash in his pockets. The cashier counts out the money, says there's not enough here. This cashier is awful, by the way.
They don't have like a take a penny, leave a penny jar?
So, of course, the narrator, ignoring the fact that the best charity is always anonymous, he does the kid a solid by laying out the extra money that it takes to buy these shoes, and then goes and writes a song about it so everybody knows how awesome of a person this person is. So the kid buys the shoes, splits. Not sure what happens with the mom. And then the next day I read in the paper that, Mrs. Smith met Jesus last night. So this kid could be running a scam right now. And maybe that's why the cashier turned him away, as he's been in here before. He's tried this hustle before, which leads me to think that this kid is panhandling. He's got a short con, playing on people's sympathy to purchase shoes. Maybe he's fencing the shoes somewhere else or is returning them for a refund. My mom died before I got back to the house, so can I get a refund on these shoes?
For sale, Christmas shoes never worn.
Exactly. What's your take on this? Panhandling on private property. Is it okay to run really non-lucrative hustles inside of Payless Shoe Source?
All right. NewSong is from Georgia, where panhandling is covered by local ordinance. So I dug down a bit. They're from Valdosta, and Valdosta does not have a panhandling ordinance. So he's not doing anything illegal here. There is a loitering statute, which applies whenever you're sitting around and creating a disturbance. You might say, he's creating a disturbance by telling the sob story and asking people for money, but it's not expressly covered by the ordinance. I do want to point out a quote from the ordinance. The definition of loitering says, and I quote, "shall also include the colloquial expression hanging around," unquote.
Okay. Whatever that means. That's a pretty wide margin that you could interpret, right?
Yeah, maybe it's just a trap to get people to confess to it accidentally.
In your professional legal opinion, does it sound like he's panhandling? I think this is more of a con. This is a con job because the trick in a con is that you get the other person to want to do it for you.
Yeah, and if that's the case, this kid appears to be too young to know better. So, more likely what you would do in this situation is open up a child protection case. Because you've got this kid who's wandering around in public. He's alone. He's dirty. He's wearing beat-up shoes. His dad is sending him out to beg money for his mom to get shoes, not for like soap or any other things this kid needs. I checked the Georgia statutes. There's no particular law there about how old a kid has to be to go unsupervised, but their Department of Human Services recommends that kids under 8 not be left out by themselves. We don't know how old this kid is. Either way, the Department of Human Services ought to be paying this family a visit.
Okay, so just a quick review of the charges. Panhandling, if I understand this right, there's no panhandling law in the books in Georgia.
Not in Valdosta, at least. The shoe store can always kick him out, though.
And then the child protection?
Child protection should definitely look more into this family.
We may have a neglected child on our hands.
Yeah.
Assuming that they're not a team of grifters and this child isn't actually just a little person who's dressing like a child.
Yeah, assuming that we have not entered Paper Moon territory.
My sentence would be for the narrator, if he wants his charity dollars to go a little bit farther, would be to contact his local domestic violence and homeless women's shelters and donate to them directly, because they can put that money to really good use and help a lot of people.
And my sentence here would be for the narrator to become a court-appointed special advocate in child protection cases, representing the interests of kids and doing investigations. You don't have to be a lawyer to do this. If you are interested in helping out kids who are in a tough situation, maybe ask around your local courthouse.
Our next song, getting into a little bit of naughty territory, so parental guidance is suggested. It's Jimmy Boyd's I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus.
I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus.
This song actually has some noteworthiness because it was condemned by the Roman Catholic Church in Boston when it was released, because it mixed kissing with Christmas. The church took issue with that. But the writer of the song, Jimmy Boyd, talked to the archdiocese and explained his case. They lifted the ban in a very, very Catholic city. So you were able to hear that on the radio after that. Other radio stations, though, banned it initially because they misunderstood the lyrics, thought it was suggesting adultery, even though it's implied in the song that the child's father, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So if you're not familiar with the song, it's from the perspective of a child who goes to bed waiting for Santa Claus, hears some noise downstairs, peeks down and sees his mother canoodling with Santa Claus in the living room. And the kid doesn't quite put it together that, as I said, it's implied in the song that it's his father dressed as Santa Claus. But I don't know. I mean, we don't know. He doesn't come out and say, I recognize Santa Claus to be my father, and now I realize that my parents have been lying to me this whole time. It's a very different song. But let's get to the heart of this. First off, is the 13-year-old, because that was the age of the original singer in this case, is that a reliable witness?
I would say that a 13-year-old is probably going to be just as reliable as an adult. The federal rules of evidence and most state rules of evidence have 4 things that you have to do to be a reliable witness. You have to know the difference between a truth and a lie. You have to know how to narrate events. You have to have the ability to remember events, and you have to have actually been able to perceive the things that you're testifying about. A 13-year-old should be just as reliable as an adult in most situations. Now, eyewitness testimony is often flawed because human memories are weird, but I wouldn't say that the kid's age would make him a less reliable witness here.
Okay.
Although really, if a 13-year-old can't tell the difference between like actual Santa Claus and his dad dressed as Santa Claus, then maybe this child is deficient in one or more of those categories. That's what I would imply if I was cross-examining this kid.
Right. I feel like this kid would be an okay witness, but it also would be pretty easy to shoot some holes in their testimony because, A, this person is in disguise. You're not really getting a good look at him. You know, you just got out of bed. Were you wearing your glasses? Do you have corrective lenses, and were you wearing them at the time? Maybe you were groggy. Maybe you had a nip of the eggnog before you went to sleep, even though and didn't tell your parents.
And then in your closing argument, you imply that the kid was making this up because he was planning to use this scandalous material to blackmail Santa for more presents.
Even though it's suggested or implied that Santa and the father is the same person, it's not explicitly stated. We don't know. Let's play devil's advocate. What if Mommy was kissing Santa Claus or one of his proxies instead of the child's father? This is a problem. If Dad here gets wind of this, he's like, no, actually, I really had to work late that night. What the hell is going on? Can this testimony be used in divorce proceedings?
I hope not. Modern best practice is do not call the kids to testify, especially if they've got material that's going to really damage their relationship with one of their parents. So in a divorce case, it's very, very uncommon, unless the judge is very, very old school, to have the kids testify about anything these days. And it wouldn't help all that much anyway, because most states, a fault-based divorce is not going to end up significantly different than a no-fault divorce. So you wouldn't have to prove adultery.
Well, it sounds like this child's home life may not be so great, because after he recounts his experience of that fateful Christmas Eve, at the very end, the last lyrics of the song is, I really did see Mommy kissing Santa Claus. You gotta believe me. You just gotta believe me. Come on, fellas. Believe me. You just gotta believe me. I feel like this child may have an extended history of being gaslighted by his parents. You know, it starts with Santa, but what else have they been doing? And then saying it didn't happen, that he's so unsure of himself.
This is why they finally made Mr. Snuffleupagus real.
Don't let it, kids. Oh, do we want to talk about the legality of Santa or someone dressed as Santa just going into people's houses?
The song kind of implies that Santa's there with Mommy's permission, especially if it's Dad.
Sure, I would hope so. Because if not, then it's going to get real dark,
yeah.
And I don't want to go there on the Christmas episode.
If he doesn't have Mommy's permission to enter the house, then he's got some variety of unlawful entry. If he had the intent to commit some kind of crime in that house when he enters unlawfully, then Santa's a burglar.
Okay, cool. So this review of the charges. There aren't really any criminal charges here, are there?
Unlikely, unless Santa broke in.
If Mommy is cheating on Daddy, then there might be a civil suit and some divorce court in their future, but probably looks like not guilty.
Yeah, it looks like not guilty to me as well.
I sentence this whole family to some kind of therapy that they can start communicating better, being honest with each other, so that this child can have some healthy self-esteem and regain trust with the people that are closest to him.
And I sentence this family to showing their son what really happened that night by having him watch Tim Allen in The Santa Claus. That should explain everything.
And our last song, and this is actually one of our more requested tunes, from Elmo and Patsy, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
Grandma got run over by a reindeer.
And I wouldn't say this is a Christmas, I guess it's a Christmas classic now. It's been around long enough, right? But it's not something that I think necessarily people are singing as they go out caroling.
I've never seen carolers sing it, no.
It does what it says on the tin. Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. It's a story of a family sitting around drinking on Christmas Eve. Grandma drinks too much eggnog, didn't take her medication, goes outside late at night. The rest of them, I'm assuming, were too drunk to care that an elderly woman left the house. The next morning, and I quote, "When we found her Christmas morning at the scene of the attack, she had hoof prints on her forehead and incriminating claws marks on her back. Grandma got run over by a reindeer walking home from our house Christmas Eve." First question, negligence by family members. It's certainly poor form to let your grandma to wander out in sub-zero temperatures, but is there a criminal negligence there?
Maybe. We are in Kentucky, where Elmo and Patsy are from, and Kentucky has a criminal statute where you're penalized for endangering the welfare of an incompetent person. And that happens when you knowingly act in a way that causes someone with a mental disability to hurt themselves. Now, we do have a line here saying, but she forgot her medication and she staggered out the door into the snow. So if the medication she forgot is something like Thorazine, like she has schizophrenia or some other mental disability, then we might have met that. The problem is going to be the word knowingly there in the statute. Knowingly means that you're either trying to engage in conduct that endangers someone, or you are reasonably sure that something terrible is going to happen to that person as a result of what you're doing here. And that would be tricky to prove in this situation.
I get the sense that this whole crew, this whole family are they're not afraid to have a drink or two. And so maybe they'd all been drinking. They were all up late. They were drinking. Everybody else was blasted out of their minds. Grandma might have been the most sober of the bunch, which is why she thought it was okay to go home by herself.
Yeah. Are you saying that just because this family is from Kentucky?
No, not at all.
If everyone else is blacked out drunk, then you don't get her, because that's not going to be knowing.
Okay.
Unless they got blackout drunk with the purpose of realizing that once we're all drunk, Grandma's going to go out and get herself in trouble.
She had been drinking too much eggnog when she staggered out the door. What about Grandma being publicly intoxicated? And could she somehow be at fault for getting struck by a sleigh with reindeer and toys because she was somewhere that she shouldn't have been? Or wasn't obeying traffic safety laws? Maybe she was jaywalking in the sleigh zone.
In Kentucky, public intoxication is when you show up in public intoxicated to a point where you're a danger to yourself or others. So I think you have got an open and shut case against her for public intoxication with the minor complication that she's dead. And You cannot prosecute dead people in this country.
Again, playing devil's advocate, because don't want to blame the victim here. It's not someone's fault if someone else hurts them. Like, if I get hit by a car, is it ever 100% my fault?
There are actually two different theories on that when it comes to personal injury. The older theory is if you did something that contributed to your being hurt, it is in fact your fault and you don't get to do anything about it. And the more recent version is if multiple people did things that resulted in somebody getting hurt, then you apportion the fault between them percentage-wise. So if Grandma's family were to bring suit against Santa Claus for wrongful death, the jury would be handed a ballot in most cases and say, all right, if you think both Santa and Grandma were at fault here, say what percentage fault it was Santa's and what percentage fault was Grandma's.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you raised a good point that we are missing a crucial piece of information, which is what that medication was. It could have been antidepressant medication, and Grandma threw herself in front of the reindeer.
It's like Anna Karenina, but with Santa.
Again, super dark.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody, and Merry Christmas. So assuming that Grandma didn't commit suicide, that she was minding her own business, trying to make her way home. And this thing happens. We're talking about the hoof marks, the incriminating claws marks. I don't even know what those would be. But is this an accident or vehicular manslaughter? Can we put Santa away for hitting this woman with his sleigh?
That's hard to say. In Kentucky, if you hit somebody in a wanton manner, so deliberate, you would charge him with second-degree manslaughter. If he was acting recklessly, that's reckless homicide. They're both felonies. Manslaughter has a heavier penalty, but it's also entirely possible that Santa doesn't get hit with any charges with this or with something a lot more minor. See, I don't know, Ted Kennedy, Matthew Broderick.
Okay, I guess there's that line, incriminating claws marks on her back. So it indicates this wasn't just like he accidentally, grazed her. He got out of his sleigh and molested her body somehow with a part of his person that he left claws marks on her back.
Yeah, and it looks like he didn't call the police after this collision either, so you've probably got him for hit and run.
At least.
Yeah, now you do have the problem of how you get Santa back for trial. If he is the American Santa who lives at the North Pole, that's international waters, so you just send an icebreaker up there to get him, and he comes back. But if this is European Santa, the one who lives in Finland, then you have to go through an extradition proceeding to bring him back. And then, how do you keep him cooped up in jail?
Right, absolutely. If there's a chimney in any of the places that you're trying to hold him, all bets are off. Assuming that we can capture this supernatural creep, are we gonna be able to say guilty or not guilty on some of this stuff? Let's just review the charges. Negligence by family members?
I think that's not guilty.
Not guilty. Okay. And then grandma being publicly intoxicated.
Guilty but irrelevant because we can't prosecute her.
Do we have Santa for murder or something, some lesser charge?
I think we've got enough to charge him with at least reckless homicide, possibly second-degree manslaughter, definitely hit and run. I would sentence Santa to exile to the island of misfit toys.
And I would sentence the family to celebrating Festivus instead of Christmas, because if they were busier airing grievances and performing feats of strength, maybe they wouldn't get so blotto on eggnog that people are dying outside.
On the other hand, they might turn to the eggnog to give them a little more confidence to perform the feats of strength. So, hard to say.
Well, that's true. Well, then we'll have something to talk about next Christmas.
Yeah.
And that will do it for our very special holiday edition of Song Crimes. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to our announcer, Deb Slater. Thank you, Cheapskate.
Yep, thanks a lot.
If there's a song you'd like us to feature, send your song ideas to songcrimes@gmail.com. If you like them, if you like the songs, buy them on iTunes or buy an LP or record or cassette or CD at your local independent music store. Maybe they got 8 tracks. I don't know. If you like the rest of the show, please subscribe, rate, review, and tell your friends about it. And Merry Christmas to all. And if you do something stupid, keep your mouth shut. Court is adjourned.
Would you like to go undercover to fight discrimination? If so, you can become a fair housing tester. Find your local fair housing organization at nationalfairhousing.org.